Hey Peppermint Patty group. So welcome back to another guided reading lesson. You guys have done such a great job on your first two, and I know you guys are going to do a great job for your third one. So this one, we are actually going to go back to doing a making words lesson, just like we did the very first week. And then after we do our making words lesson, we're actually going to do things a little differently this time. You're going to actually go back to Seesaw and you are going to complete the worksheet before you read the book. And the reason is because we're going to talk about making predictions. And you can make predictions the whole time that you're reading a book. But it's really good to make predictions before you even open the book and before you even start reading it. So we're going to do that. You're going to go to Seesaw. You're going to do that before you read the book, and we'll talk more about it in a minute. And then we'll read the book the very last thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so just like we did the very first week, you are going to make sure that you have all of these letters ready to go. So remember, it doesn't have to be magnetic letters like I have. If you just want to print them out from what I sent mom and dad, if you want to just write these letters down and rip them apart, that's fine. Just make sure that you have these letters ready to go. So press pause, do that, and then when you're ready, come back and press play, and we will get started with our making words lesson. All right, so let's get started with our making words lesson. So I think I kind of mentioned it during the first lesson, but I want to make sure that I really talk about it now, and that is, why are we doing making words? And the reason that we're doing making words is not just to have fun and kind of move some letters around and do all of that. There's a really important reason, actually several. First of all, it helps us with our letters and our letter sounds, just to help us remember those. It helps us with patterns in words. It helps us notice that we can see patterns in different words. So for example, you're going to see the same hunk and chunk in every word that we make today. And then it also just helps us learn how we can spell certain words and how words work. So there are a lot of really good reasons why we do making words. So always remember that as we're doing it. It's not just to be doing it. There is a reason for us doing this. All right, so just to kind of remind you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a word and I'll tell you how many letters are in that word. I'll write it on the board and I'm going to put it in a sentence. That way you make sure that you really understand what word it is that I'm saying. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to snap. And remember, don't move your letters until I snap. And the reason for that is because I want to give you a chance to really think about the word and in your head or even out loud, stretch it out and really make sure that you hear all of those sounds before you start grabbing those letters and making the word, okay? And I want you to be able to hear what the word is and me putting it in a sentence. So don't move the letters until I snap, okay? Now, I can't see you while you're doing this, so I'm trusting you that you are not moving the letters until I snap, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So our first word has 4 letters in it. So I'm gonna write 4 on the board. And our first word, remember, don't move the letters yet. Wait until I snap. But our first word is boat, boat. Like I went fishing on the boat. Say boat. Good. All right, now you can go ahead and move those letters around and make that word boat. And remember, if you need extra time, just press the pause button and then you can always press play and keep going once you're finished. All right, so let's think about the word boat. Now, first of all, we have not done, well, we did this hunk and chunk last week when we did our analogy chart and we had the EE hunk and chunk and then we had that OA hunk and chunk, but we haven't practiced it as a whole class. You guys are the first group that are getting to practice that OA hunk and chunk. So if you remember last week, our phonics dance hunk and chunk for the OA goes like this. It goes, O says to A, oh, I love you, and A says absolutely nothing. So when you see OA, say O. And remember, we do this because we say that long and strong O sound even when you have that OA together. So now that we've kind of practiced that, take another look at your word. Boat. What hunk and chunk do you think you hear in the middle of it? All right, so hopefully you remembered that OA hunk and chunk. So when I stretch out that word, I hear that B sound at the beginning. So definitely a B. Then I hear that hunk and chunk that we just practiced, that OA, O. So I hear B, O. And remember that A says absolutely nothing, so it's silent. You just hear that long and strong O sound. And then I know it has 4 letters, so let me see. Boat. Good job. I hear that T on the end. So we spell boat, B-O-A-T. Now remember, that hunk and chunk is gonna be in every word that we do today. So you don't even need to kind of move this. You can leave it right there, and we're gonna make words kind of around that hunk and chunk, okay? All right, our second word has 4 letters in it, and it's the word coat. Coat. Like I wore my coat outside because it was really cold. Coat. All right, say the word coat. Very good. And now you can move those letters around and see if you can make the word coat. And you really should only have to move 1 letter, so that'll be my little hint. All right, so let's take a look. So I don't know about you, but I still hear that oat at the end of my word. The only thing that I hear that's different is that beginning sound. So instead of that B sound, I hear coat. Well, I know the K makes the K sound, but do I have K up here? No. So that means that my letter that I do have that makes the K sound is the C. So it must be C. So we spell coat, C-O-A-T, and we still have that O hunk and chunk in the middle of our word. Very good. All right, so remember, I'm gonna give you the next word, but don't move anything until I snap, okay? All right, our next word has actually 5 letters in it, and I'm gonna give you a little hint with this word. You're gonna actually keep all of these letters in your word. You're only gonna add one of these letters somewhere in here to make this new word, which is pretty cool, right? All I have to do is add 1 letter and it makes a totally different word. So our next word is coast. Coast. Like I went to the Atlantic coast to go to the beach. It's like where the beach is, the coast. All right, everybody say coast. And then go ahead and see if you can find that letter to add to our word to make the word coast. Remember, press pause if you need to. All right, so let's take a look. So I still hear that K sound at the beginning. Oh, and I still hear that O-A hunk and chunk. But then when I get towards the end, I hear an extra letter in there. I hear a blend at the end. That means like 2 letters that I'm just gonna blend together, those sounds. So listen, K-O-st. What sound do we hear before the T sound? The S sound. And what letter makes that S sound? Very good. So we have that S-T at the end of the word. Very good. So we spell coast, C-O-A-S-T. Very good. All right, our next word has 5 letters in it, and it's the word toast. Toast, like I put some butter on my toast this morning. Everybody say toast. Very good. All right, now I want you to see if you can move the letters around to make the word toast. You may only have to move 1 letter. That's my little hint. Toast. All right, so I don't know about you, but I hear still at the end that oast sound. The only difference that I hear is that beginning sound. I don't hear the K anymore. I hear the T sound. And you know what? Miss Bale forgot that you actually need 2 T's. So if you need to, pause the video and get another T, or write it and tear it apart real quick and then come back and press play, okay? I have some right here, so I'm gonna grab some while you go do that too, because I forgot that you're gonna need 2 T's. That's important, because what do you hear at the beginning? The T sound, yeah, but you still need that T at the end, right? So you're gonna need another T at the beginning. Very good. So if you need to go do that really quickly. All right, so hopefully now everybody has that extra T. I am so sorry that I forgot to have you grab that before we started. But let's take a look and see how we spell toast, because we still have that O-A, hunk and chunk, in the middle of our word. So we spell it T-O-A-S-T. Very good. All right. Our next word is float. Float. So remember, don't make it yet, okay? I want to go to the pool and just float in the water. Everybody say float. Very good. All right, see if you can make the word float. All right, so I'm listening to when I hear the word fl. I hear a blend at the beginning of that word. I hear two letters that when I say them, I'm gonna blend those sounds together. And I hear the f, definitely that F sound. And then I hear the fl. I hear that L sound after. Very good. So then I still hear that same hunk and chunk, right? But listen to the difference. Float. I don't hear that S sound anymore, so I just hear that T sound. Very good. Oh, and I think I forgot to mention, but it does have 5 letters in it. All right, so we spell float, F-L-O-A-T. Very good. All right, so here's our very last word. Now, this one's a little bit trickier because you're going to add a word ending to the end of your word, okay? So you're not going to change anything except you're going to add some letters to the end to make a new word, all right? So our new word is actually going to have 7 letters in it. I know, that's so many. All right, so our new word has 7 letters in it, and it's the word floated. Floated. Now, when we say it kind of differently just because it's kind of the way we talk. It's our accent. But if I really stretch it out and say all of those sounds, I would say floated, floated. I would really make that T sound. But when we talk, we say floated. But when you're stretching it out, think floated, floated, even though we don't really say it like that. All right, so if I said, I floated in the water all afternoon. Everybody say floated or floated. Very good. See if you can find those 2 letters that you can put on the end to make the word floated. All right, so I hear another hunk and chunk, and we'll learn this one with the whole class eventually throughout this year, but I hear that ED hunk and chunk at the end. Very good, and this time it says floated. So we hear that id sound at the end. So we spell floated, F-L-O-A-T-E-D. Look at that long word you guys put together. So remember, we do making words because it helps us with our letters and our letter sounds, and it helps us hear patterns in words because all of our words had that O-A hunk and chunk, that long and strong O sound that it makes. And it just helps us learn how we can spell those words even better, okay? You guys did a great job, and now we're going to talk about what you're going to do on Seesaw before you read our book. So you guys have worked really hard already, and now, as you know, is a really good time for you to take a break. So if you need to take a break and get up and move around or go grab something, now is the time to do it. So press pause, and then when you're ready to come back and join me for our book, then you can press play. Okay, so let's talk a little bit before you read your book about the word predict. So you could say you can make a prediction or you're going to predict, and it's the same thing. You can say predict or prediction. It's the same. But all it means is that you're going to make a really good guess using the pictures, using the clues. So kind of like inferring, but it's really just more of a big guess as to what you think is going to happen. So what we're going to do is you're going to actually take a look at the cover in just a minute, and just based on the cover, and that's it. So you're just looking at the cover, the title, the picture on the cover, and you're going to make a prediction of what you think is going to happen in our story. And then before you read the book, so don't read it yet, you're going to go back to Seesaw and you're going to write or draw a picture, or you could do both, and tell me, what do you think is going to happen in the story? So what is your prediction? So let's take a look at the cover, and I'm not going to pop up again. I'm just going to let the cover sit there for a minute. You can pause it for a second, make some predictions, and then I want you to go back to Seesaw and do that worksheet first and make some predictions, and then meet me back here to read the book, okay? I'll see you in a minute for the book. So hopefully you've had a chance to go to Seesaw and you've had a chance to write down a few, meaning 3, predictions that you think are going to happen in our story before we read. The reason that making predictions is good is because it gets us thinking about the story and thinking about what's going to happen. And is it okay if your prediction isn't right? Yeah, of course it is. I make predictions all the time that aren't right. Everybody does. But it's always good to kind of think about, what do I think is going to happen in this story? So if you haven't done that yet, if you've not gone to Seesaw, press pause, and I want you to go do that first before you keep watching, okay? So we're going to read our book, and it's called Adventure in the Purple Forest. And so this story is about a little space boy, and he kind of goes through the forest and has a little bit of an adventure. And we're going to see if it's good, if it's bad. We're going to see what happens. But he finds another character in the forest. I'll give you a little hint about that. So I'm going to pop in just like I did the last 2 weeks and kind of talk about some things as you read, but always make sure that you go back and use those strategies that we've talked about. So before we read the rest of the story, let's talk about one new strategy that you can use if you get stuck on a word. Okay, so I know that we've done a lot of things before we actually read the book, but that's okay because they're all really, really important. And we'll get to the book in just a second. But one thing that I wanted to show you guys was a new strategy that we can use if we get stuck on words, because we know that's going to happen. We're going to get stuck on words. It's just going to happen. So one thing that you can do is called Flippy Dolphin. So just like we had Skippy Frog, where you skip the word, and we had Chunky Monkey, where you find hunks and chunks or words that you know. This is another strategy that you can use to figure out a word on your own. So with this one, all you have to do is look for that vowel that you see in the word, or the first vowel, and try both vowel sounds, because we know that vowels have 2 sounds, right? Like A has A and A. E has E and E. I has I and I. O has ah and O. And then U has and U. So all you're going to do is find that vowel in the word and try both of those vowel sounds. So you might try the short vowel sound first. If that doesn't work and it still doesn't make sense and you can't figure it out, then you're going to flip the vowel and try the long and strong vowel sound and see if that helps you figure out the word. So in just a little bit, I'm going to show you what that's going to look like, but let's go ahead and get started with our book, Adventure in the Purple Forest. Okay, so let's look at our Flippy Dolphin strategy that we talked about just a few minutes ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend to get stuck on this word right here. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to use that Flippy Dolphin strategy to figure out what that word is. Okay? All right, so let me show you how that looks. And I'm just going to start at that sentence. I'm not going to start at the very beginning. Space Boy zoomed. I don't know that word. Okay. Let me use the Flippy Dolphin strategy and let me try to use both A sounds, because I see A is that first vowel that I see. And so let me try the short A sound, the A sound. Along. 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 That doesn't make sense. That's not a word. That's a nonsense word. Okay, so let me flip it and try the long and strong A sound, the A sound. Let's see. A long, a long, a long, a long. Hold on. No, that's a word. Let me see if that makes sense. Spaceboy zoomed along on his scooter until he came to the purple forest. Well, that makes sense, and it definitely looks like the word along, and sometimes we would say like along, but I think that makes sense. So hopefully you got to see how I tried both of those vowel sounds to figure out that word. And if there's ever more than one vowel, try that first vowel first. And try both sounds. But that is always a good strategy to use if you get stuck on a word. So don't forget that flippy dolphin strategy, because we will definitely come back to it, and I definitely want you to use it if you get stuck. So I don't know about you, but I notice a word on page 8 that looks a little different than all the other words. Can you tell what word I'm talking about? Hopefully you found the word bang, because bang, if you look at it, the words, the letters are a little bit thicker and a little bit darker, and we call that bold print. So anytime that you see words that are a little bit thicker and a little bit darker and they stand out on the page, that's called bold print. And the reason an author uses bold print is because they want it to stand out. In a nonfiction book, usually that means that it's an important vocabulary word that you might be able to flip back to the glossary and find the definition for it. But in a fiction book like the one that we're reading, a lot of times it means that the author wants you to really emphasize that word. And that just means that they want you to really put a lot of emphasis and say that word differently than the rest of the words on the page. So let me show you what that looks like, and then hopefully you can pause the video and have a chance to practice it on your own, okay? So if I'm reading this story, I want to make sure that I emphasize that word bang. So let's see. Spaceboy zoomed up, up, up. Then bang! He bumped into a tree. He fell down, down, down to the ground. So do you see how I really emphasized and said that word bang differently than all the other words? And think about, why do we want to do that? Did it make it more interesting to read it like that? Yeah, of course it did. So what I want you to do is press the pause button, and I want you to practice reading page 8 and see if you can put some emphasis or really emphasize that word bang, the bold word, just like I did. And then when you're ready, press play again and we'll read some more. Well, I hope you enjoyed our story, Adventure in the Purple Forest. I know it was kind of silly and kind of fun, but I hope you liked it as much as I did. And the good news is that you're already finished with your seesaw work. You did that before you read the book. So now that you're finished with the book, you are finished with our guided reading lesson. So great job, great work. You guys worked really hard and learned a lot of good things. And I will see you back here next week for another guided reading lesson. Good job.